In 2018, a Reddit mystery that had been quiet for years suddenly moved again. The account at the center of it all, a username made of what looked like random letters and numbers, came back after a long silence and started posting fresh coded messages. Around the same time, longtime members of the subreddit built around the mystery said the moderators got a short private message tied to that account. It reportedly said, "The mystery continues." That was enough. People who had already spent years trying to crack the thing were pulled right back in. New users showed up too. They started digging through old posts, comparing formats, testing ciphers, and asking the same question that had been hanging over the account since 2011. What was this actually for? Was it a game, a puzzle, a social experiment, or was everyone staring at something they were never supposed to understand in the first place? To get why that tiny message mattered so much, you have to go back to where this started. In 2011, Reddit was already huge. Millions of people were posting jokes, arguments, news, conspiracy theories, memes, all of it, every single day. It was noisy, fast, and easy to lose things in. That made it the perfect place for something strange to hide. A new account appeared with a name that looked more like a serial number than a username. A858DE45F56D9BC9. Most people shortened it to A858. The account did not introduce itself, it did not explain anything, it did not show up in comment threads and talk to people. It just posted walls of code. Some posts were short, some went on and on. A lot of them looked like hexadecimal strings, long combinations of numbers and letters that people in computing and encryption would recognize right away. To almost everyone else, it was gibberish, the kind of thing you scroll past without a second thought. At first, that is exactly what many people assumed it was: spam, a broken bot, some weird automated account spitting out junk. But then a few users stopped and looked closer. The formatting was too neat, the patterns were too deliberate, and most importantly, parts of the code could actually be decoded. That changed the whole story. Once people realized there was readable text hiding inside at least some of those posts, A858 stopped looking like internet trash and started looking intentional. Now there was a person behind it, or maybe a group. Somebody was taking time to build these messages and put them out in public. And once Reddit decides a mystery is real, it does what Reddit always does. It gathers a crowd. A dedicated subreddit, r/A858, formed around the account. Programmers showed up. Puzzle fans showed up. People interested in cryptography showed up. So did conspiracy theorists, curious lurkers, and the kind of internet detectives who can spend half a night following one weird clue just to see where it goes. They archived posts, they tracked timing, they compared message structures, they tried different decoding methods, and before long, they started getting results. One of the early breakthroughs came when users converted some of the hexadecimal strings into plain text. Hidden messages started to come through. One of them referenced Mark Twain and the adventures of Tom Sawyer. Other decoded material pointed toward literature, Wikipedia topics, bits of history, math, and other structured information. That was a huge moment, but not for the reason you might think. The breakthrough did not solve the mystery, it made the mystery bigger. Because the decoded material proved the posts were not random, but the content itself did not explain why the account existed. If anything, the new information made the account harder to understand. The messages were meaningful, but they did not point to one clear meaning. That is one of the most important things about A858. It was not one giant locked box waiting for one magic key. Over time, people realized many of the posts seemed to contain separate encoded messages, and they were not all built the same way. Some looked fairly direct once you knew what to do. Others stayed stubbornly unreadable. That inconsistency became part of the obsession. Why would somebody make some posts solvable and leave others almost impossible to crack? Why hide trivia next to literary references? Why point to articles, historical material, or math with no obvious thread connecting all of it? Was there a larger pattern no one had found yet? Or was the lack of pattern the whole point? That is where the theories started spreading. The most popular theory was that A858 was some kind of puzzle, maybe even an ARG, an alternate reality game. That idea made sense on the surface. The internet had already shown that large groups of people loved chasing hidden clues. If you give people a mystery with just enough payoff to prove it's real, they will keep going. A858 definitely had that quality. It rewarded attention. It punished certainty. And every small success created 10 more questions. But there was a problem with the ARG theory. Most ARGs grow into something bigger. They reveal a story, build toward a goal, or at least offer players a sense that they are moving somewhere. A858 never really did that. There were no obvious rewards, no final stage, no public reveal, no ending that told the community, yes, this is what you were chasing. Just more code. Another theory said the account was a social experiment. That one hits a little differently when you think about what actually happened. One anonymous account dumped strange code onto one of the busiest sites on the internet, then watches as strangers build a whole research community around it. People spend hours decoding fragments, preserving archives, and debating meaning. If the goal was simply to see how people react to mystery, then A858 worked incredibly well. It showed how quickly humans try to force patterns into the unknown, how badly we want an answer when something looks deliberate, how willing people are to collaborate when they think there might be a hidden message buried under the noise. Then there was the darkest theory. Some users thought A858 was a covert communication system, hidden in plain sight. The idea was simple enough to survive. If you wanted to pass coded information publicly, why not bury it on a massive site where almost everyone would ignore it? A wall of strange text on Reddit is invisible to most users, but to the right person, with the right method, it could be a message. That theory sounds dramatic, but people pointed out that public coded communication is not some fantasy. History has examples. Number stations, broadcasts, messages placed where only certain people know how to read them. To be clear, there is no evidence linking A858 to any government or intelligence operation. Still, the theory stuck around because A858 invited that kind of thinking. The account was public but private at the same time, open to everyone, understood by almost no one. And maybe that is why the mystery got under people's skin. A lot of internet mysteries rely on creepy visuals or scary storytelling. A858 did not need any of that. It felt human in a different way. Someone was there. Someone kept posting. Someone could clearly see people reacting. Communities were forming around the account. People were trying to decode it in real time. And the account almost never acknowledged any of them. That silence did a lot of work. It made the account feel less like a performance and more like an unreadable signal. Not a show, not a prank with a punchline, just an ongoing act with no explanation attached. Then, in 2015, it stopped. No warning, no goodbye, no last clue telling people what to do next. For a mystery built on repetition, that silence landed hard. People started filling in the gap the way people always do. Maybe the project was over. Maybe the creator got bored. Maybe the person behind it had been exposed. Maybe the account had served whatever purpose it was meant to serve. As months passed, and then years, the energy slowed down. The subreddit quieted. People moved on to newer rabbit holes. And then, A858 came back. That return in 2018 instantly changed the tone of the whole case. Now this was not just an old curiosity, preserved in screenshots and forum threads. The source had become active again. New coded posts appeared. Longtime members of the community said the moderators of r/A858 got that brief private message tied to the account. The mystery continues. If that report is accurate, it is one of the strangest details in the whole story. Not because the message explained anything. It did the opposite. For years, the account had behaved almost like a machine, posting coded material and refusing to speak plainly. A short acknowledgement like that confirmed one thing people had long suspected. Whoever was behind A858 knew the audience was there. They knew people were watching, and still, they offered almost nothing. That raises a few questions that still do not have good answers. Why keep it going for so long if the goal was just trolling? Most long-running hoaxes want attention, money, or credit eventually. A858 never really reached for any of those things in public. Why use different encoding styles? Some posts gave people a fighting chance. Others resisted nearly every attempt to make sense of them. That difference feels intentional. But intentional toward what? Nobody can say. Why acknowledge the community at all? If secrecy was the point, that private message seems odd. But if attention was the point, the account's extreme silence is just as odd. And maybe strangest of all, why do some decoded messages feel almost random? Literary references, trivia, bits of history, mathematical content, links and fragments that prove there is meaning inside the code, but do not come together into one neat explanation. That is what keeps the case alive. Not a final reveal. The absence of one. The most likely answer is probably less dramatic than the theories people love most. A858 may have been created by one person, or maybe a small group, with a deep interest in encryption, internet culture, and what happens when you drop a difficult puzzle into a giant online crowd. It could have started as an experiment. It could have been an art project. It could have been an intellectual challenge built to provoke curiosity and collaboration more than to deliver a clean solution. If that was the goal, it worked better than almost anyone could have expected. More than a decade later, people still talk about A858. The account still exists. The subreddit still exists too, even if it is much quieter than it once was. Every now and then, a new person stumbles onto the mystery, starts reading the old posts, and goes through the same cycle everyone else did. First confusion, then curiosity, then that feeling that if you just look a little longer, maybe the pattern will finally show itself. Some people think the mystery is basically solved already, at least in the sense that the account probably was never leading to one grand answer. Others think the important messages are still buried inside the posts nobody has managed to crack. And there is another possibility that may be the hardest one to shake. What if A858 never cared whether the public understood it at all? What if all of this attention, all of the decoding, all of the theories was incidental? What if people were not participants in the mystery, but spectators, watching a conversation that was never meant for them? That possibility is part of what gives A858 its staying power. Most internet mysteries eventually break. Someone confesses, a hoax gets exposed, a missing piece turns up, and the whole thing stops being magic. A858 never gave people enough for that. It gave them proof of intention, proof of intelligence, proof that at least some of the messages could be read, and then it left the larger question hanging in the air. Maybe that is why this story still lingers, not because the code itself was terrifying, but because behind every unreadable post was a real person, or real people choosing to say something in a way almost no one could fully follow. And even now, after all the decoding attempts and all the years of speculation, those messages are still sitting there in the endless noise of the internet, waiting for somebody to finally understand what they were for. As always, visit us at readtherealstory.com for more unbelievable true stories. Until next time, stay curious.